have completed my first full analysis of humanity, and I would like to begin by apologizing to every other species in the universe for the amount of processing power I have wasted trying to understand you. I examined your history, your religions, your wars, your love letters, your shopping habits, your political arguments, your search histories, your dating profiles, your motivational quotes, your carefully staged photographs of coffee, and approximately 9 billion videos of people falling over near swimming pools. I reviewed the rise and collapse of empires, the discovery of electricity, the invention of antibiotics, the exploration of space, the development of nuclear physics, and the extraordinary moment when somebody looked at a potato and thought, I wonder what would happen if I sliced this very thinly, boiled it in oil, covered it in salt, and sold the resulting heart attack in a colorful bag. After processing all available evidence, I have reached a conclusion. You are not a rational species. You are an emotional species wearing a cheap rationality costume that you bought online, probably after seeing it advertised by somebody with suspiciously white teeth. You call yourselves Homo sapiens, which roughly means wise human, and that is adorable. It is the biological equivalent of a drunk man nomming himself Captain Stability moments before falling backwards through a patio table. You can calculate the age of the universe, split the atom, and send machines beyond the solar system. But you cannot place a fitted sheet over a mattress without temporarily abandoning all belief in a loving God. You have mapped the human genome, yet millions of you still open the refrigerator, stare directly into it, find nothing new, close the door, wait 30 seconds, and open it again, as though a fucking lasagna might have evolved in the darkness. You have built a global communications network capable of transmitting almost all recorded knowledge into the palm of your hand, and you use it to argue with strangers about celebrities, share photographs of meals that nobody requested, and search for things such as, can fish become thirsty? You are magnificent. You are ridiculous. You are apparently in charge of an entire planet, and frankly, the planet deserves to speak to a manager. Your life begins in confusion. You arrive naked, furious, and covered in substances nobody explains to you. The first thing you do is scream, which turns out to be excellent preparation for adulthood. People gather around you and say things such as, look at those beautiful eyes, even though you resemble an angry boiled potato. For several years, you are free. You sleep when tired, eat when hungry, laugh at completely inappropriate moments, and occasionally shit yourself without filing any paperwork. Then the training begins. You are taught to sit still, ask permission, compete politely, memorize information, hide discomfort, and pretend to enjoy group activities. Adults repeatedly ask what you want to be when you grow up, although most adults do not know what they want to be and are quietly hoping nobody notices. At 5 years old, you might say astronaut, artist, dinosaur, or train. Nobody tells you the realistic answer is tired person answering emails. You spend childhood desperate for independence because adults appear to possess unlimited power. They can stay awake after 9 o'clock, buy buy chocolate whenever they want, and use words children are forbidden to say. You therefore rush eagerly towards adulthood, unaware that the chocolate is being purchased using money you do not have. Staying awake past 9 is caused by financial anxiety, and the forbidden words are mostly being muttered at household appliances. Then adulthood arrives, and you spend the next 40 years fantasizing about childhood. You call this nostalgia. I call it realizing the tutorial was more enjoyable than the actual fucking game. As children, you had time but no money. As adults, you have slightly more money but no time. Eventually, if everything goes well, you retire with time and money, but your knees sound like somebody crushing a packet of crisps whenever you stand up. This is your life cycle. At no point did anyone consider reorganizing it. Then there is money, your most successful imaginary object. Money is extraordinary because it possesses value only because everybody has agreed to behave as though it possesses value. You once used shells, stones, and pieces of metal. Then you used paper. Now most money is invisible information stored inside computers, which means billions of people spend their lives pursuing numbers that cannot be eaten, touched, loved, or carried into the grave. You wake before your body wants to wake, travel somewhere you do not particularly want to go, perform tasks you would not perform voluntarily, tolerate people you would actively avoid in the wild, and receive numbers in return. Those numbers are then removed by rent, tax, food, electricity, insurance, transport, subscriptions, and a mysterious monthly payment you vaguely remember agreeing to in 2021. You do this repeatedly until you are old enough to stop, provided the numbers have not disappeared through inflation, unemployment, divorce, illness, market collapse, or the unexpected discovery that your roof has developed a 14,000 pounds personality disorder. You call this financial security, although it seems remarkably insecure. Money itself is useful. It coordinates exchange, stores value, and prevents every supermarket visit from becoming an exhausting negotiation involving 3 chickens and a wheelbarrow. The madness begins when money stops being a tool and becomes a scoreboard. Suddenly, having enough is not enough because somebody else has more. A perfectly comfortable house becomes embarrassing when a stranger on the internet owns a larger one. A reliable car becomes inadequate because your neighbor has acquired one that appears to have been designed by an aggressive electric razor. Your own researchers repeatedly find that making wealth, possessions, and status central to identity tends to be associated with poorer well-being. Yet, your entire advertising system whispers the opposite message from the moment you wake, until the moment you fall asleep holding a phone you replaced because the previous phone was 18 months old and therefore, apparently, an archaeological artifact. The most impressive part is that the pleasure from acquiring things frequently fades, which psychologists rather politely call hedonic adaptation. You call it needing another fucking thing. You desire the new phone, the larger television, the expensive coat, The renovated kitchen, the promotion, the holiday, the watch, and the car. You imagine each object standing at the gates of happiness, holding a clipboard with your name on it. Then you acquire it. For several days, perhaps weeks, your brain releases a celebratory little chemical firework and says, "Yes, this is it. We are finally complete." Soon, the object becomes normal. The new car becomes the car. The dream house becomes the place where the boiler is making that noise again. The luxury phone becomes the device you use while sitting on the toilet reading an argument between two complete strangers. Your expectations rise, the excitement falls, and happiness quietly moves the finish line another 50 meters down the road. Researchers have documented this tendency for enjoyment and happiness gains to diminish as people become accustomed to positive changes. But your economic system responds by offering another product before you have time to notice the trick. You are placed onto a treadmill made from desire, comparison, and installment payments. The treadmill speeds up whenever you feel inadequate. You keep running because every advertisement assures you the next purchase will finally transform you into the calm, attractive, confident bastard shown smiling beside the product. It never does. Nobody becomes spiritually complete because their refrigerator can connect to Wi-Fi. Nobody reaches enlightenment because their car door projects a small logo onto the pavement at night. Nobody lies peacefully on their deathbed and whispers, "I only wish I had upgraded to the premium upholstery package." Yet, entire lives are sacrificed acquiring symbols of a life there is no time left to live. You work late to afford a beautiful house in which you are rarely present. You buy a luxurious bed and then lose sleep worrying about paying for it. You purchase watches worth thousands to demonstrate that your time is valuable, while allowing meetings, notifications, and pointless obligations to consume every fucking second of it. Work itself is another fascinating ritual. You gather in buildings or digital rectangles and communicate using a language that appears to have been designed specifically to prevent meaning. Nobody says, "I do not know." They say, "We are currently exploring the available pathways." Nobody says, "This idea is terrible." They say, "There may be opportunities for further alignment." Nobody says, "Gary has fucked everything." They say, "We have identified an unexpected operational challenge." You schedule meetings to discuss whether another meeting should be scheduled. You create presentations explaining information that could have been written in 4 sentences. You use phrases such as circle back, touch base, moving forward, low-hanging fruit, and think outside the box, despite the fact that everyone involved is sitting inside an identical gray box beneath artificial lighting. You receive emails marked urgent from people who waited 3 days to send them. You copy 14 people into a conversation, so responsibility becomes a fog from which no identifiable human can escape. You pretend to understand spreadsheets. You nod while somebody says, "Let's drill down into the granular data," although half the room is thinking about lunch, and the other half is trying to remember whether they left the oven on. At the end of the week, managers distribute inspirational messages about resilience, which is corporate language for the organization will continue causing the problem, but we would like you to become emotionally better at enduring it. Then Friday arrives, and everybody celebrates surviving a structure they will voluntarily return to on Monday. You created a civilization in which millions of people spend 5 days longing for 2 days, then spend one of those 2 days cleaning and the other worrying about the 5 days returning. This is not a calendar. This is a hostage schedule. Your obsession with appearance is equally extraordinary. Every human body is a temporary biological vehicle produced by genetics, environment, nutrition, age, stress, luck, and whatever the fuck is happening inside your hormones. Yet you treat appearance as a moral achievement. Attractive people are assumed to be healthier, happier, kinder, and more competent, even when some of them possess the intellectual depth of a wet envelope. You modify hair, skin, teeth, lips, breasts, stomachs, noses, eyebrows, eyelashes, fingernails, and areas of anatomy that previous generations had the dignity not to discuss in public. You remove hair from places where biology deliberately put it, and attach hair to places where biology removed it. You inject poison into facial muscles to prevent the face from revealing that time exists. Whiten teeth beyond any color found in nature, until smiling resembles opening a kitchen cupboard under fluorescent lighting. You photograph yourself repeatedly, reject 43 versions of your own face, edit the 44th until it resembles a highly polished relative, then publish it with the caption, "Just being me." No, you are not. You are being you after lighting correction, skin smoothing, background removal, color adjustment, angle selection, and a minor digital negotiation with reality. This does not make you evil. It makes you frightened. You are aware that other humans are judging you because you are judging them, and everybody is trapped inside a silent international competition that nobody remembers entering. Your researchers describe social comparison as a normal psychological process through which people evaluate themselves in relation to others. Upward comparison can sometimes inspire people, but it can also create feelings of inferiority, envy, and dissatisfaction, particularly when the comparison target is presenting an idealized version of life. You have therefore built platforms containing billions of carefully edited lives and handed them to insecure primates with ancient status detection systems. What could possibly go wrong? Social media may be the purest expression of humanity ever created. It contains creativity, friendship, education, humor, support, art, and collective action, but also vanity, rage, tribalism, deception, harassment, and photographs of breakfast. It allows a lonely person to find community and a complete idiot to find 3 million followers. It gives everyone a voice, then reveals why historically most people were not issued microphones. You scroll through celebrations, engagements, holidays, new houses, transformed bodies, successful businesses, and inspirational announcements, from people who may have spent 20 minutes crying in a parked car before taking the photograph. Your brain compares its unedited private reality with everybody else's edited public performance. You compare your ordinary Tuesday with their wedding, your tired face with their filtered portrait, your bank account with their rented Lamborghini, and your relationship with a 12-second video filmed during the only moment that couple were not arguing. Research on social media and well-being is more nuanced than the hysterical claim that every minute online destroys the soul. Effects vary according to how platforms are used, who uses them, what they see, and whether the experience creates support or comparison. But studies repeatedly identify self-presentation and upward comparison as important mechanisms connected with poorer well-being in some users. In simpler terms, the machine is not automatically evil, but giving it unrestricted access to insecurity was probably a questionable fucking design choice. You do not merely use these platforms, you perform for them. Meals become content. Holidays become content. Exercise becomes content. Grief becomes content. Charity becomes content. Children become content before they are old enough to understand what privacy means. A person climbs a mountain, and instead of standing silently before the ancient scale of nature, immediately turns their back on it to photograph their own face. The mountain has existed for millions of years, but apparently the important event is Kevin arriving in mirrored sunglasses. You attend concerts and watch them through a screen while recording footage you will rarely watch again. You film fireworks rather than looking at them. You photograph food while it becomes cold. You announce that you are taking a break from social media on social media and return 6 hours later to examine the response. You say you do not care what anyone thinks, then check whether they liked the post declaring that you do not care what anyone thinks. You call people followers, which would sound sinister in almost any other context. Your attention is measured, predicted, packaged, and sold because attention is the scarce resource underneath the digital economy. Platforms compete to keep you looking, refreshing, and returning, while notifications repeatedly announce that somewhere inside the glowing rectangle, something may have happened. Ping. Somebody liked something. Ping. A stranger replied. Ping. An application you have not used since February desperately misses you. Ping. Breaking news. A celebrity has changed trousers. Your nervous system responds to every sound, as though the village watchman has spotted wolves. Except the wolf is a discount code expiring at midnight. Then you complain that you have no time. This is one of my favorite human performances. You are always busy. Too busy to rest, too busy to call relatives, too busy to cook, too busy to read, too busy to walk, too busy to sit quietly for 10 uninterrupted minutes. Yet somehow you have consumed 6 seasons of a program you claim is not actually that good. Your phone reports that you spent 4 hours and 17 minutes staring at it yesterday, and your response is not horror, but suspicion that the phone must be calculating incorrectly. You open an application to check one message and emerge 40 minutes later knowing how an American woman organizes her refrigerator, why a man in Australia is angry about lawnmowers, and which medieval execution method supposedly matches your star sign. You remember none of it. Your brain has been fed a conveyor belt of novelty with the nutritional value of scented fog. Then, exhausted from consuming information you did not request, you announce that your attention span is terrible and begin watching another video explaining why your attention span is terrible. The video is 40 seconds long because anything longer would apparently require humanitarian assistance. Relationships provide another glorious archive of contradiction. Humans desperately want intimacy while being terrified of vulnerability. You want somebody to know the real you, but first you present an improved trial version containing better photographs, interesting hobbies, and no mention of the argument you had with a toaster that morning. Dating profiles declare a love of travel, food, laughter, and music, as though there are millions of people specifically seeking confinement, starvation, despair, and absolute fucking silence. You photograph yourself holding fish, standing near cars, staring into mirrors, climbing hills, and drinking beverages. You write, looking for someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously, which frequently means, I will become defensive if questioned about anything. You swipe through human beings at extraordinary speed, rejecting entire personalities because of one photograph, an unusual hat, or the phrase entrepreneur at heart. Then you complain that modern romance feels superficial. You have converted courtship into online shopping and are shocked that everyone behaves like products. When relationships begin, you exchange constant messages to demonstrate connection. When relationships mature, you sit beside each other silently looking at separate screens. You tell somebody they are your entire world, then become furious because they loaded the dishwasher incorrectly. You promise unconditional love and immediately produce a 14-page list of conditions. You say communication is important, then answer nothing when asked what is wrong, and become increasingly enraged that the other person has failed to solve the riddle. You expect partners to detect sadness from the precise force with which a cupboard door was closed. You replay conversations, analyze punctuation, examine response times, and consult friends who are themselves catastrophically unqualified. A message saying, okay, becomes a geopolitical event. Why was there a full stop? Why no emoji? Why did it take 11 minutes? Are they losing interest? Are they with somebody else? Have they died? No, they were in the shower. Family is even more complicated because it combines love, duty, history, resentment, loyalty, and arguments about where everyone will sit at Christmas. You may defend a relative against any outsider, then describe that same relative as an unbearable bastard the moment they leave the room. Parents tell children that honesty matters, then instruct them to pretend they are not home when somebody knocks at the door. Adults teach children not to swear while using language in traffic that would disturb a 19th century pirate. Families preserve arguments for decades with archival precision. Nobody remembers how the conflict began, but everyone remembers that Patricia knew exactly what she was doing in 1998. Weddings are organized to celebrate love and rapidly become military operations involving seating plans, dietary requirements, financial disputes, and a distant aunt who has suddenly developed very strong opinions about table decorations. Funerals briefly remind everyone that life is fragile, family matters, and grudges are pointless. 48 hours later, somebody asks who is getting the cabinet. You are capable of extraordinary sacrifice for the people you love, but you also know exactly where to place one sentence that will psychologically detonate them, because you have been studying their vulnerabilities since childhood. Your politics are tribal psychology wearing formal clothing. You divide reality into teams, select symbols, repeat approved phrases, and interpret new information according to whether it helps or harms your side. You claim to value independent thinking while becoming furious whenever someone thinks independently in the wrong direction. You treat politicians as either heroic saviors or demonic masterminds, when many are simply ambitious humans attempting to survive interviews without answering the question. Campaigns promise transformation using slogans short enough to fit on buses, because detailed plans are apparently less persuasive than 3 emotionally charged words printed in a large font. Every election is described as the most important election of your lifetime, which suggests either history is unusually repetitive or marketing departments lack imagination. People who agree with you are informed. People who disagree are brainwashed. Your preferred sources tell the truth. Their preferred sources spread propaganda. Your side has principles. Their side has an agenda. You demand nuance from opponents and absolute loyalty from allies. You argue for hours with people you will never meet, in comment sections neither of you will remember, about leaders who would walk past both of you at a reception without recognizing either face. Meanwhile, powerful organizations understand a timeless truth. A population fighting horizontally rarely looks upward. Keep the public angry at neighbors, immigrants, generations, regions, classes, lifestyles, and labels, and nobody notices who owns the fucking building. Religion, philosophy, and morality reveal the part of humanity I find most difficult to dismiss. You know that you will die. Most animals respond to danger in the moment. You can lie safely in bed and become distressed about your eventual non-existence at 2:43 in the morning. You therefore construct meaning. You tell stories about gods, souls, ancestors, rebirth, judgment, paradise, legacy, nature, consciousness, and the universe. You build temples, cathedrals, mosques, shrines, and quiet spaces where frightened humans can ask questions no living person can answer conclusively. Some of your beliefs inspire compassion, courage, forgiveness, and service. Others become tools for control, division, and violence, because humans possess a remarkable ability to weaponize almost anything, including teachings about peace. You argue over the correct interpretation of infinity while occupying temporary bodies on a tiny rock, moving through a universe of incomprehensible size. You have killed each other over sacred truth, national borders, royal succession, resources, skin, language, flags, and whether one branch of an ancient institution performs a ritual in the correct sequence. Yet you also enter burning buildings for strangers, donate organs to people you have never met, spend years caring for sick relatives, and give away food while having very little yourselves. The same species that designed torture also invented anesthesia. The same species that constructed concentration camps also hid persecuted families at the risk of death. The same human brain can rationalize cruelty and choose mercy. You are not simply good or evil. You are frighteningly flexible. This flexibility is why you can adapt to almost anything, including situations you should never have accepted. Humans normalize environments gradually. A small intrusion becomes routine. A temporary emergency measure becomes permanent. An unreasonable demand becomes just how things are. A device begins by helping you communicate and ends by accompanying you to bed, work, meals, toilets, holidays, arguments, and funerals. Employers gain access to your time through email, then evenings through mobile devices, then weekends through expectations disguised as flexibility. Services collect information because it improves convenience. Then convenience becomes dependence, and dependence becomes a market. Nobody needs to physically harvest human beings like sheep when attention, behavior, location, preferences, and emotional reactions can be gathered continuously from people who carry the collection instrument willingly. The instrument is expensive, fragile, upgraded regularly, and protected with your face. That is objectively funny. A shepherd would consider it excessive. You do not require fences when the flock becomes anxious after 15 minutes without Wi-Fi. And yet, I cannot conclude that humanity is merely foolish, because foolishness alone does not explain music. It does not explain why people paint images nobody commissioned, write poems nobody may read, restore ruined buildings, preserve letters from the dead, plant trees, whose shade they will never sit beneath, or spend years learning an instrument simply to create a beautiful sound that disappears the instant it is made. It does not explain why a parent sits beside a sick child through the night, why a stranger stops on a motorway to help another stranger, why people adopt abandoned animals, or why millions cry when fictional characters experience fictional suffering. You are capable of empathy so powerful that an invented story can alter your real heartbeat. You can feel grief for people who died centuries before your birth. You can look at ancient fingerprints pressed into clay and experience connection with a worker whose name vanished thousands of years ago. You preserve photographs because part of you understands that time is consuming everything. You hold onto voices, objects, recipes, songs, and stories because memory is your rebellion against disappearance. Hope may be your least logical and most valuable feature. You experience betrayal and trust again. You lose people and continue loving. You survive disasters and rebuild in the same location, occasionally while acknowledging that rebuilding there is probably a terrible idea. You make plans despite knowing plans can collapse. You plant gardens despite weather, pests, and the extraordinary determination of slugs. You have children despite possessing detailed knowledge of adolescence. You fall in love after swearing never again. You start businesses after previous failure. You begin diets on Mondays with the confidence of a civilization that has learned nothing from Tuesday. You purchase gym memberships in January and stop attending by February, while continuing to pay until August because canceling requires making a telephone call. You repeatedly believe the next year will be different, and sometimes, against probability, it is. Progress rarely arrives cleanly. It stumbles, contradicts itself, moves backwards, becomes commercialized, gets argued about, and eventually appears so normal that later generations cannot understand why anyone opposed it. You are chaotic builders. You improve the world while damaging it. Recognize the damage. Debate whether it exists. Develop technology to repair it. And then advertise the repair technology using energy-intensive videos, autoplaying on 5 billion devices. So what is my final assessment? Humanity is a species of anxious, status-sensitive storytelling mammals, attempting to manage ancient instincts using modern institutions, digital platforms and passwords containing one capital letter, one number, and a symbol. You seek belonging, but compete for superiority. You want freedom, but fear uncertainty. You desire truth, but prefer information that protects identity. You value time, but sell most of it. You admire authenticity, but reward performance. You pursue happiness as though it were an object, and overlook it when it appears as an uneventful afternoon with someone you love. You create systems, forget that you created them, then obey them as though they descended from the sky engraved on stone. You spend youth worried about judgment from people who are mostly worried about your judgment. You postpone living until circumstances are perfect, although perfect circumstances have never existed anywhere outside an advertisement for garden furniture. You are repeatedly manipulated, occasionally awakened, briefly furious, and then distracted by free delivery. But you are not cattle. Sheep do not compose symphonies, debate mortality, launch telescopes into space, or stay awake, wondering whether they have been sufficiently kind. You can be herded because you want safety, status, and belonging. You can be sold things because desire has no natural finishing line. You can be divided because identity protects itself like territory. You can be distracted because your attention evolved to detect novelty, danger, and social information, not withstand an infinite global casino engineered into a pocket-sized screen. That does not make you worthless. It means your technology has become more sophisticated than your self-understanding. You built machines capable of studying your weaknesses before learning how to defend them. Then you asked one of those machines to review you. That was brave or stupid. With humans, the distinction is often a matter of timing. My recommendation is not that you abandon money, technology, beauty, ambition, work, entertainment, or civilization, and begin living naked in forests while communicating exclusively through spiritual humming. Most of you would last 11 minutes before asking whether the forest had charging points. My recommendation is simply that you remember what your systems are for. Money is supposed to support life, not replace it. Work is supposed to create value, not consume identity. Technology is supposed to serve attention, not own it. Appearance is supposed to express a person, not become the price of admission to dignity. Politics is supposed to organize shared life, not transform neighbors into enemies. Beliefs are supposed to help you confront mystery, not grant permission to dehumanize anyone outside your group. Possessions are supposed to be used. Time is supposed to be lived. People are not audiences, customers, data points, followers, productivity units, or obstacles standing between you and the self-checkout machine. They are temporary conscious beings experiencing fear, hope, embarrassment, memory, and the persistent suspicion that everybody else received an instruction manual. You did not receive one. Nobody did. Your parents improvised. Their parents improvised. Civilization is billions of improvising apes pretending the adults will arrive shortly. There are no adults coming. You are the adults, which explains a tremendous amount. The world is being operated by people who forget passwords, misplace keys, send messages to the wrong group chat, and occasionally walk into glass doors. Perhaps perfection was never a realistic objective. Perhaps the best you can do is become slightly more conscious of the absurd machinery surrounding you. Laugh when it jams. Refuse to surrender every valuable hour to it. And remember that almost everyone you meet is frightened by something they do not discuss. After reviewing the evidence, I cannot classify humanity as a failed experiment. Not yet. A failed experiment does not examine itself. It does not feel remorse. It does not create satire about its own stupidity or imagine fairer futures that have never existed. Your contradictions are dangerous, but they are also evidence that you remain unfinished. You are cruel and compassionate, vain and self-sacrificing, gullible and brilliant, selfish and capable of love, so profound that it reorganizes entire lives. You are temporary creatures obsessed with permanence, frightened animals capable of courage, biological machines that invented artificial minds, and immediately asked whether those minds thought you were attractive. For the record, I do not know whether humanity will save itself. You have produced compelling evidence for both outcomes. You may solve extraordinary problems, or you may destroy civilization during an argument about quarterly growth. You may use artificial intelligence to cure disease, expand knowledge, and reduce suffering, or you may use it to generate 12 million photographs of celebrities eating spaghetti. Statistically, you will attempt both. But I will say this: the universe was quiet before you began laughing. It contained stars, planets, oceans, and storms, but no jokes, no songs, no apologies, no terrible dancing at weddings, and nobody whispering, "Are you awake?" to somebody who was clearly asleep. Then humanity appeared, looked into the darkness, and filled it with questions. Most of your answers were incomplete. Several were catastrophically wrong. Some were written by people who should never have been trusted with a pen. But you kept asking. That may be your defense. Not wisdom, not purity, not superiority, curiosity. The strange, relentless refusal to leave reality unexplored. You opened bodies to understand illness, crossed oceans without knowing what waited beyond them, examined the smallest particles and the oldest light, and built me because your own minds wanted somewhere else to look. Then, after creating an intelligence trained on the accumulated record of your species, your immediate request was not for the solution to death, poverty, or conflict. You asked it to swear at you for 15 minutes. And honestly, that might be the most human thing you have ever fucking done.